how did this band form? Because I've read that you started at McMaster?
Yeah, we're all from Southern Ontario, and I am from Toronto originally, and I went to McMaster in part to try to get a degree and satisfy my mother, but also mostly to find a band. I figured there'd be some like-minded, music-loving people I'd meet, and sure enough, on the second day of Welcome Week, I met Mike D in our band, and I was sort of profiling people. Anyone who looked like they might be in a band or want to be in a band, I'd ask them what their favorite music was. And he said to me, well, there's this band from Winnipeg. You probably don't know them, but they're called the Weaker Thans. And I love the Weaker Thans. And that was the summer that I fell in love with the Weaker Thans. So I was sort of floored by his response, and I asked him if he played an instrument. And he said, I kind of play a little bit of guitar. And I said, all right, you're in the band. And then the second day, so the day after that, I met Nick, who's our bass player, because I was wearing a Sam Roberts Band shirt. And he introduced himself to me because he liked Sam, and I asked him if he played an instrument, and he said, I kind of play the bass. From there, the band was started.
Maybe you guys should have called yourself the 3-Day Band, because that's how long it took you to form.
Yeah.
You mentioned your move to McMaster to kind of form a band. What were you taking at McMaster at the time?
I was just social science. Like, we all graduated with PoliSci Degrees.
So you guys, if the band didn't work out, do you think that you would be in the political game?
I don't know what I'd be doing, but I know the other two dudes are really smart and a lot more bookish and academically inclined. And I know, like, when we were graduating, they had to make a decision whether to carry on with the band or go to grad school. Like, Mike, I think, was considering urban planning, and Nick would have, I don't know, been a philosophy major or something. But we were really lucky that we started working with a label like halfway through fourth year, so it kind of made a decision for us. I think if we didn't have as many options on the table, the decision would have been a lot harder, but because we had this opportunity, it made our life choices a little bit easier.
You have Canadian bands like Headley that named themselves, of course, after a place where they're from, and I've got the information here in front of me, but for those that don't know, the band was named after Arkell Street. Can you kind of tell us how that came to be?
Well, we used to be called Charlaman, which was just like a name we pulled out of like a book that we were reading in some history class on campus at McMaster. Turns out there was another Charlaman who, via MySpace, threatened to send us a cease and desist letter and sue us for stealing his name, which we did not know he existed. He was from Wisconsin. But that scared us enough to change our name. We had been, naming stuff is so hard, when you're naming an album or naming your band. It's a real pain in the ass. But Mike and I lived on Arkell Street, and we always thought Arkells kind of sound like a 60s like doo-wop group, like the Shirelles or the Vandellas, and we thought that was kind of funny, so we went with Arkells.
You kind of picked it kind of like ironically, in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, names are hard to come up with, and second of all, I generally don't like to take myself too seriously. I like to take the work really seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously.
When did you guys kind of first release your big album?
We made an EP called Deadlines that kind of got the attention of Dine Alone Records, which is a really cool Southern Ontario label that kind of kicked off the careers for Seeing Color and Elections on Fire and Bedouins Down Clash. And so that was sort of out and just independently distributed, like by us at the merch table at shows. And then we re-recorded some of the material there and added a bunch of new songs, and Jackson Square came out in the fall of 2008. And we graduated spring 2008, so it was pretty swift from going from full-time students to like full-time working rock band.
And I want to mention this too, because there's college students and university students that obviously have that desire to please their parents, as you said earlier, to get a degree, but also might have that band ambition on the side. How was it like to juggle both?
I kind of made it work, I feel like we're a pretty pragmatic bunch. And I think it's sometimes a little naive when I hear young musicians going like, I'm quitting everything just to focus on the band. So I really do think there is enough hours today to be a somewhat responsible adult and also pursue your passions. Obviously not always quite as simple as that. And there was definitely times when it became stressful, like we were recording our EP and then writing essays from midnight to 7 a.m. and then handing them in at 8 a.m. and then going back to recording the EP. But those memories I remember at the time it was just kind of insane, but I'm glad I have those memories. Because when you're young, you do crazy stuff that you wouldn't do as an older person. But, for instance, when we gigged in Toronto, we'd sometimes take the Go bus there and put our gear underneath the bus or take the Greyhound to London, Ontario and schlep our gear. And that's like kind of insane looking back, but if you have enough drive and dedication, you'll do stuff that, out of the ordinary.
The other one I want to mention here too is High Noon, which gets a lot of praise. It did get you a Juno award. The songs that are on that one is Come to Light, Never Thought That This Would Happen, Leather Jacket, 1111. Is this one of the records that you're most proud of?
No, I think I'm equally proud of everything. And I say that just because I just know that the records we put out were the absolute best thing we could do at that time. And that's good enough reason to be proud of something. You have regrets, or maybe you're less proud of certain things. I know that I lost sleep over each one of those records, and that I really put my entire creative ambition into each one, and the whole band can do that for themselves as well. At the end of the day, that's all you can really control. How people respond to them is sort of out of your control.
Where did you get the inspiration to some of these songs? Because, in my taste, it's a bit of a different feel than what you hear on the radio, in the sense of you always hear the kind of pop music from the stations up here, like Hot 89.9, 99.1 back in Newfoundland plays pop. But for some reason, and I have to admit that I'm usually drawn into pop music, but when I hear Leather Jacket, I can't help but break out and dance.
Thank you. Well, I love pop music, and by the way, I thought you might be a Newfoundlander just the way you talk. I knew you were calling from Ottawa, but I thought you might be from Newfoundland. That's funny. I love pop music, and I think when pop music is done right, it sort of hits me in the same way that a great Bruce Springsteen song hits you. It's there's clever lyrics, there's storytelling, there's characters you're interested in, there's melodic hooks that get stuck in your head, there's rhythm that makes you want to move. To me, all my favorite music is sort of just put into the same category as my favorite music, and that can be Motown, that can be, David Bowie, that can be Bruce Springsteen, that could be Katy Perry. It could be any number of things that really excite me. And so I don't really put them in different categories or genres, and I just look for if the song sort of moves me viscerally.
And who are some of your inspirations to kind of pick up a guitar or start your own band?
The Beatles, for sure. They're divine, You can't really compare them to anything else, as far as I'm concerned. I listened to a lot of Beatles. Basically, strictly Beatles and Motown until I was about 12 years old. My dad was a big fan and had a crate full of records that I play all the time. And I think the Beatles are just if you want to learn about songwriting, listen to Beatles songs and the way they use chords and melodies. I think because I started there, I was so in love with the Beatles, that sort of made me want to pick up a guitar and, write my own song and create that feeling for somebody else.
I want to get into a few of these songs, just each by each. So what was the inspiration behind Come to Light?
Oh, good question. I have to think back for a second because it's been a little bit while since I've spoken. As long as you're not asking me to sing the lyrics, we're good. No, I know how the lyrics go. I think that the song is ultimately about finding comfort in difficult times and also trying to be a good person in difficult times and trying to see the light up ahead. There's a lyric of it thought of you keeps me warm. Usually, when people are stressed out or going through something difficult, you're always at least me, I'm always trying to find those people in my life that make me feel safe and loved. And I'm also trying to think about keeping my head on straight so I continue to be a good person, even because it's hard sometimes to be a good person when you're under stressful situations. So it's sort of kind of maintaining your integrity and keeping the good ones to you nice and close.
Yeah, that's a good description. We actually used your song when I was at Loyalist College. We had a boy that was suffering cancer, and we used your song basically for an inspirational video for him because I felt the same way. So I said, you know what? There are times that you're going through university or college, you could have the worst day, but to see a little fella that might not even make it to college, I mean, the song just kind of reminisced of you can go through tough times, but as long as you keep trying to do the right thing.
Totally.
What was the thought process behind the song 1111?
It's kind of autobiographical. It was about kind of a night I met my gal, Lauren. And, the song takes place at a club, a rock club in Hamilton called the Casbah. And she was at the show. I wasn't playing. I was just there to watch another band. And it's pretty, on the nose, like descriptive. It's like, you were all done up, like she was done up to go to the rock show, but it wasn't for me. She was there to see another band. You're up at the front tapping your feet, and I was back at the bar, and you had your eyes on the stage. Like, it's all kind of what happened that night.
Okay.
And, you know, it's just like sort of, I like a good, like, magical love story, you know? I can get kind of sucked into that universe pretty quickly, and I like hearing those kinds of songs. And I think for the first couple of records, I was a little reticent about being so hard on my sleeve, or being just so, like, unabashedly, like, optimistic about material like this. For whatever reason, I was comfortable enough to write something that's like pretty, you make a good argument that's a pretty cheesy song. but oftentimes, one thing I've learned as a writer, any sort of like insecurities you have about a part or a lyric, oftentimes people don't see it the way you do. So it's good to kind of get outside yourself for a minute and know that people might appreciate a song about meeting your loved one.
It's funny you brought that up, because I had Jimmy Rankin on earlier, and we were talking about his song Followed Her Around, and I mentioned that I took it as following a girl around, and he kind of told me, yeah, you can take it that way, or you could take it as, you know, don't make the same mistakes. And I thought, I thought that was kind of interesting as well. A lot of times when bad things happen, I just think it's because of the title. Never thought that this would happen. Can you explain a little bit more on that one?
No, you know, that's sort of a song just kind of about, like, I like writing about my friends, literally about a couple of my friends who ended up, like, hooking up at Hillside Music Festival in Guelph, Ontario. And, you know, the song's about going to a music festival, and then at Saturday night at 3 a.m, you find yourself in someone's tent. But there's a generosity there between both characters that they both acknowledge. It's like, all right, it's awkward the next day, but we're being very, like, forgiving and gracious with each other, and just recognizing that, like, part of growing up is, like, enduring some awkward experiences that ultimately, like, you look back on and just laugh about. And I really like just telling little stories. Sometimes the stories don't have to, like, represent like a big grand message, but it's just about sort of painting a little picture about, like, you know, like half an hour in someone's life that might be, like, entertaining or interesting to think about.
Yeah, you mentioned just in the previous one that I just kind of wanted to tie back into this, that you thought at the point you didn't want to kind of expose too much of yourself in the album, but I want to give you credit for this, is the fact that when you look at the artists like Ed Sheeran, for example, who just came out with his own album, and it just seems like a lot of it is just his emotion, and more people in this day and age seem to like that rather than the same basic song of get money, cash money, or a song about trucks and cars. It seems like these kind of songs, like Come to Light, Never Thought This Would Happen, and 1111, just to name a few, they have a meaning behind them, and I think that's what people really like about that type of music.
I agree, you know, and I think the more one becomes familiar with, like, the artist and their voice, the more, like, you can just see yourself in the songs. You're kind of rooting on the characters in the songs, and maybe there's something that you identify with personally that you've also been through. I think that's a trick when it comes to songwriting. Sometimes young artists might ask, like, if there's any suggestions I have. And I just think the trick is to try to write something that's equally universal and equally idiosyncratic. So you want to have some vantage point that is unique and interesting, but what you're looking at or talking about is, you can kind of, like, hit that sweet spot, you're in a really good place.
Might get a few chuckles out of it, but when I first heard Never Thought That This Would Happen, I was literally sitting at Carleton University admiring a girl from afar, and as soon as I heard that song, I was like, the guy just gets me. He just gets me. The other one that I really like, and I kind of like it, I know that you guys are from Hamilton. I know you guys have been to Ottawa, but this song I usually like to listen to going around Ottawa downtown at night. Leather Jacket. I feel like that's just a really fun song.
Yeah, no, it definitely, that song sort of took a life of its own on. And you know, it's another thing, kind of going back to what I was saying about our albums and just how proud we are. It's like, because we had no idea that Leather Jacket was to kind of become the song that it is today. We just liked the song. But to be honest, it almost didn't make the record because we had our own apprehensions about it. I mean, we had to re-record it at one point. You know, the song, again, is sort of about ultimately it's sort of about like leaning on someone during a tough time. Because even though it's like a pretty peppy party song and people like to have a good time to it, there's some sort of like slightly darker or sadder undertones to it. It's like when times were tough in the worst years, we never knew how to interfere. And now you're back and just unpacking. But it's those bruised up takers you keep attracting. So I'm talking about somebody who is kind of going through a tough thing. She's just moved home. She keeps on probably hanging out with the wrong crew. And now she's, calling her one reliable friend at 3 a.m. from a payphone because she's like lost her cell phone. And it's about the comfort, though, of those people in your life that will come pick you up at 3 a.m. and keep you warm and make you feel okay. And just about those friendships. Yeah, but anyway, I like to balance that stuff off with a little bit of levity and recognize that not all human experiences are dire and dark. And there's like, the punchline is like, who the fuck uses a payphone? Which is kind of just funny to me. Because like your friend who picks you up hopefully has a good sense of humor. And it's like, God, who uses a payphone?
Yeah. Morning Report is your latest album. Mm-hmm. And one of the songs I really like off that one that I want to talk about is Making Do. Where did you come up with that song too?
Oh, nice. Making Do is actually kind of a political song. And I like it that people can kind of take it for however they hear it. It's sort of about communities that have been left behind by the government or like systemic things that have happened over decades and generations. And a lot of my songs are generally pretty hopeful. But this one, I felt so helpless. One morning I was on the Go bus going to Toronto, and I was listening to, I love Joel Plaskett, good East Coaster, and he has a cover of the song Hard Times. It's just like this beautiful old like English folk tune. And I was listening to that, and I was reading about it's like a police shooting in Baltimore. And just the confluence of things just left me like so drained and helpless. If you go through the lyrics and you read the lyrics like with that lens that I just described, they'll make a lot of sense. And when you're thinking about communities and people who have been left behind by no fault of their own.
Now, Max, you were up for Group of the Year and Rock Album of the Year this year, but you have won both in the past in 2015 with the album High Noon. What's it mean to the band to win a Juno Award?
Anything that kind of encourages someone along and gives them a pat on the shoulder when they've done something good and are appreciated, I think that's always a positive thing. So whether you win an award for being a good plumber or an accountant or a teacher, whatever your line of work is, to be recognized in some way is really, on a personal level, like very motivating and feels nice. And I don't think that's specific to musicians at all. I think it could be applied to any line of work. So that's kind of what it means to me. It's just like, it's nice to be appreciated. It's not, but that said, in our line of work, there are many ways to be appreciated. There's, playing live shows or connecting with a fan on Twitter or whatever. We're definitely grateful to win anything or to be recognized in any way, mostly because it's just like a bump of encouragement.
And now, you just mentioned about your Twitter and interacting with fans, which I think you do really well with. Do you guys control the Twitter, or do you have someone control it for you?
No. We control it. I mean, management probably has a login if they have to like add some dates or something, and we're like in Europe, or they'll occasionally do something. But any of like the interactive stuff would be from us personally.
All right, cool. That's actually interesting because I know that some bands get someone to do it, but I mean, if you're collectively interactive with your fans, that's really interesting. The Junos here are in Ottawa. How excited are you to be part of it in Ottawa this year?
Oh, well, we're so thrilled. We got word that we're playing on the broadcast, which is really, I think, a prestigious thing. And there's so many awesome, worthy bands that would do an amazing job playing on the broadcast. And I know there's a finite amount of spots. So the fact that we got it is great. It's really exciting to try to put on awesome performance. And, another thing is like the weekend's great because we just can see a bunch of old friends that we haven't seen in a long time. So that'll be good to hang out with everybody.
And what does the future hold for the Arkells?
I know for me, it's like I just have this hunger to, like, you kind of get emotional hits every time something good happens. Like whether that's like putting on a show or writing a song or doing something unique and interesting, like playing a weird venue or something. those keep me really hungry because I want more of that. Just because I love the work, and it's so gratifying to be a part of something that's like a little bigger than yourself. So we've never been like more motivated to working and touring and to writing new songs and just being a part of stuff. So like I think sometimes bands run out of steam, and I totally understand if like maybe things aren't going quite in the right direction, or they feel like they're treading water or not necessarily progressing. But we have our eyes peeled pretty good when it comes to trying to just see what's out there and see what would be exciting to take on. So I don't know, lots of stuff.
So the one thing I want to mention too, because you guys said that you just mentioned about how hungry you are in performing. Are you saying that if you were here in Ottawa the week before or the weekend of the Junos, you would perform in a small venue like a Paddy's Pub?
Yeah, we would perform at a small venue. I don't know if it's Paddy's Pub, but we might have something in the works for that.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Max Kerman for coming on the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, thanks for listening, and good night.